hello, hello. Welcome, everyone. Hi. It's been a while. I haven't seen your lovely faces in so long. Thank you for being here and welcome. I see everyone in chats. We've got hello to Unreal Engine on YouTube, Twitch, and Fortnite Create on YouTube. How are y'all doing today? Hi. Welcome, welcome. Thank you for coming. Today, we will be talking all about the first person camera device and kind of breaking that down. We're going to be talking about the history of it, what the tool is, how it works, what you can expect, the kind of stuff we're excited to see. Um, like a tutorial on how to use it. Sort of. We'll be going into details on it, but we'll also be linking in chat some documentation for how you can check out some examples and how to kind of break it down yourself. So we will definitely be sharing that in a second. We can see you. Hi, welcome. Hi. You're welcome for the ping. Welcome from Discord. Hi. But yeah, so we'll be going into kind of just an overview of the tool. If there's something you'd like more, if you want to see more of a deep dive, let us know. And we can look into that in the future. I know the team's working hard at more documentation and videos as we speak, but we're doing so well. Thank you so much. All right. Well, with that, yeah, so we're gonna dive in. We're talking again all about first-person camera device, and I have the wonderful team here to share a bit more about it. Yeah, so welcome, guys. Welcome in. Hello, hello.
Yes.
And I will go ahead and we'll do some rough introductions here. I'll go ahead and throw it to you, James.
Okay. I'm James Ringerhoff. I'm the lead engineer for the first-person camera devices. Um, well, for all the camera devices, actually. I've been working at Epic for 12 years now. First few years were in the mobile space. We worked on Infinity Blade titles and moved over to Fortnite Creative in 2022. So happy to be here today.
Sweet. Pop it over to Andrew.
Hello, Andrew Ruffini. I've been at Epic now for 7 years and been working mostly in the FNE space, creating a lot of the devices that we use in creative mode and UEFN. I guess I also worked on Village, but this is first person. So
I love Village. And throw it to Ryan.
Hi, I'm Ryan Steeman. I've been at Epic for about 5 years. I'm a gameplay engineer. I focus mostly on animation engineering, so basically making the character look right on screen and how they move. And I've been really focusing on the first-person systems for the past couple of years.
Cool. Awesome. Well, thank you all for being here today. I know the community is super excited to learn more. So I guess in regards to first person camera device, we'll talk a little bit about just kind of like how this tool came to be. I know it's something that's been highly requested by the community for so long. But from what you all remember, how did this all start? Where did the urge come from, and how has it been kind of developing this, and what was the, I guess, the goal, essentially? It seems obvious, but I'm just curious to hear from you all how it's been.
I can speak from the creative side. I think Ryan has been working on the first-person tech for a while, but for the on the creative side of things, um, beginning of 2022, we put together a team. We called it the anti-jank team. We were looking at features in creative that weren't really working like they're supposed to. And one of the things we focused on was the helicopter pad hack, which most people should know was the way to get people into first person at the time.
Mm.
So that's kind of where the motivation for doing first person and creative came from. Was we wanted to give them a better tool than hacking together a bunch of helicopter pads.
That's a good point that we see a lot of when we see the community starting to build something themselves from whatever they can do with it, like however they can. It's a desperate it's a show for what they want and what would be an awesome thing to create. So for those of you that do, I know I'm gonna call out Tom Jank just for all the cool stuff that he randomly builds on the internet and shows off to the community with what he can, which is really cool to see. But I guess that kind of bleeds into what we were doing internally, which is kind of cool with the anti-Jank
Yeah.
team. Cool, very neat.
I want to, sorry, like to
Yeah,
be clear,
go
the
ahead.
helicopter hack was taking our helipad asset and just like making it really big to force collision so that the camera would just be inside of the player.
That's wild.
It really was just, life finds a way moment. So it was clearly something the community wanted, and so definitely a priority.
Were we aware of the hack before they were, or did they show us that hack? Just curious.
Unless they don't know which came first. Yeah.
I think almost certainly the community found it well before we were like, hey, did you know that you can do this?
That's wild. Very cool. And then for those of you in chat too, if you have any questions for our guests today, feel free and just put question ahead of your question in brackets and drop it in there, and our lovely mods will gather them for us. But we'll be answering questions through this stream as well. And if I'm looking off the side, I'm looking at all the chats we have. So yeah, we'll keep up with that. So yeah, so there was a need for it. I know we were excited about it. I know it took some time, and we'll kind of go into the history and everything in the future as well. But chat, just kind of curious to hear, how's it been using the tool? Is there any immediate feedback or thoughts you have? Are you excited? I know I wasn't here. I was on leave when it all came out, but I imagine it was something you were all so excited for, and then we finally got it. So that must have been exciting. I know it's still experimental at this time as well, so that's good to note. So we'll be continuing to iterate on it and dropping more stuff as we go, but cool. Okay, cool. Hi. Okay, awesome. Sounds good. Well, with that, I guess we can dive into Ballistic also, was the big thing that came out. So you're able to see how it works alongside the tool, what we developed internally. For those of you who haven't checked it out yet, definitely check out Ballistic inside of Fortnite. It's a new game mode that is inspiring at the very least. So you can see kind of what the tool can do if you haven't yet. But as far as Ballistics, I know the team here has put together some examples of what building Ballistic was like, and how we utilized it with first-person camera device. So, Dan, if we could dive into that.
Yeah, okay, cool. So this first slide's like tangentially related to Ballistic, and it kind of went through the initial design of designing the first-person camera. Where we landed was that there was like two ends of the sort of first-person spectrum in games. There's like the precision tactical shooter side, and then there's a cinematic, like immersive side. I don't know if I'm allowed to say like specific examples of games, so I'm not going to. But basically, they tend to lean one or the other. And for Ballistic, we wanted to create something that was more tactical, but also still sort of feel immersive. So with more camera shake, with more just kind of flashy animations and stuff that like a traditional tactical experience might not have. It's actually, I guess, everything regarding that. Basically, we just didn't want it to be distracting. We wanted to be able to focus on the gameplay and getting good, and making sure that when you shot at somebody, it felt like you were shooting at somebody. And when you were going to reload, you could still focus on what was happening on the screen and everything. So
Was there any change, Andrew, to like feedback? Just curious for in terms of like how it feels when you're using a gun in Fortnite and then Ballistic. Like, I know you're talking about the animations and the shake and stuff, but was there anything else that changed in terms of like the actual like when you're shooting at something or when you hit something, the reaction from that or?
Yeah, so for the ballistic specific guns, there was I guess a lot changed. We definitely we tightened up the spread. There's really no spread, and focused more on having like actual recoil patterns. The amount your accuracy gets destroyed based on moving is significantly higher in ballistic as well, with our guns. Beyond that, I guess that the feel of the gun, they fire faster. We wanted a faster, I guess, time to elimination, um, to create a more like dangerous sort of, well, once again, tactical, right? Like you want, if you're out of position, gone. If you've got somebody like, and you've actually got the drop on somebody, gone. Definitely, it's not nearly as forgiving as traditional Fortnite. which actually goes into this movement stuff. One of the first things we noticed in early playtest was that how you move in Fortnite works really well in third person because you can see a lot of what's going on, and you can get behind cover well in advance. You can kind of plan in advance. On ballistic or in first person rather, you don't really have that luxury. So you need to be able to really like peek around and get back quickly, which is why we increased the acceleration and deceleration of the player, but we didn't really touch the top speed. So the point is, you can peek around a corner and be like, "Oh crap, that's happening," and then immediately peek back, or peek out, fire some rounds, and then immediately move back. The goal, once again, is just to create more responsive gameplay.
Awesome. Yeah, you can definitely see the difference there.
Yeah, you definitely. I don't want to be prescriptive about anybody making their maps, but in the first-person maps that I've played,
Mhm.
like you can feel the difference when they're using the ballistic movement or the Fortnite movement. It just feels a lot more responsive with the ballistic stuff.
Okay, cool. Noted. We're getting a lot of good questions in here. Um, Here's one that I don't know. Let's see. It was on the topic of how we're talking about bullet spread. Will we ever have the option to reduce the bullet spread penalty for movement within a creative map? Does anyone know?
I don't know if we're allowed to answer that question. That's a
Um,
really good suggestion.
we
We
yes.
should definitely write that one down and take it
Yeah.
up and see if there's any plans for it.
Definitely. Yeah, we could definitely note it. I mean, I feel like most of these, for most of what we're working on, correct me if I'm wrong, team, but we're definitely taking feedback. That's why it's experimental. So if you had feedback, please do share. And then as far as what we're working on, if we are working on something, we can definitely say we're working on it. So that's okay. We wouldn't be able to give any dates or times or anything like that. As well, because we things change. That's how development is. But I know I see here there's some questions like is there any way or is it planned to let us use our pickaxe in first person? I feel like that's a fair question. Is that something
That
we're
one's
looking
okay.
at?
Yeah. We definitely want to. Our goal first person is to support um, all of Fortnite's functionality in first person. The timeline for that is uncertain, but we definitely want to support by the end of first person being like fully implemented. You should be able to like on your own theoretically create like a BR experience completely in first person. I want to be clear that I'm not saying that BR is being made in first person. I'm saying that if you wanted to make your own,
Yes.
you would have the ability to.
Okay, cool. Cool. Okay, cool. We can move on then, and I'll drop some more questions. I'm trying to keep the questions to the topic chat, so if I haven't asked it yet, don't worry. We'll get to it. I just wanted to distract too much from the topic. So, um, I know we had a next slide, right, Andrew? There we go. Cool.
Oh, sure. Yeah. Okay. I feel like I made these slides. I should remember what they are. Uh, we yeah. So we specifically chose the Chapter 5 Season 1 weapons as Ryan actually had implemented a lot of the original tech to get those scopes working in first person for BR in Chapter 5. So it was already there, right? We already had a foundation. So that is a big part of why we chose those guns specifically. They're also just kind of really well balanced for the mode and look really cool. Which I guess my follow up to that is why aren't all the weapons supported?
Right.
Because we have to make custom animations for every reload and every shot fired. There's a Ryan system once again, which he'll go into, is incredibly robust and has a sort of we can take what's going on in third person animation and apply it to first person in a way that works pretty well out of the box. But reloads, especially, can look a little rough, which is why I'm sure if you've noticed, pretty much every other gun just drops off screen when you go to reload it, because we just don't we don't have the animations yet, because we want them to look good. We don't want to release anything if we can help it that looks incredibly unpolished. So this is kind of our middle ground of here's all the guns mostly in first person, but if you want a really polished experience, use these ones. And that was actually one of the really cool parts about Ballistic was Ballistic was used as a sort of driver for the first person tech to help push it even further and refine it and play test it all internally. It was our dog food project, right? So we were able to really push the tech a lot harder because of everything we found with that.
Awesome. So we did have a question about that, and I'm assuming it sounds like you pretty much answered it, but people are wondering if they can expect more weapon animations in the future. So yeah, it sounds like we're working away, but it's quite the process, and there's a lot involved, huh?
Yeah, there are a lot of guns in Fortnite. And
So
there's
many
more.
guns.
Yeah, and it doesn't seem like we're gonna stop making guns. So, we
Yeah.
yeah, we're working through it. There's definitely just getting the core tech even balanced. Like we know there's still some issues in live. Sometimes with like respawning where well, I won't go into them. I don't wanna.
I want to highlight the
Yeah.
I don't want
highlight
to
the
highlight
bugs.
that,
I
but
mean,
we know they're there,
We're aware.
and so we want to get
Yeah.
all those definitely addressed first. Sorry, Ren, I didn't cut you off.
yeah, so I just want to talk about Ballistic came out on a pretty quick timeline. So the animators and I had to come up with ways of just getting animation to show up on screen as quickly as we could, really. And consequently, we kind of didn't give the animators a great pipeline for authoring animation and getting it to show up in engine the way they were expecting. So right now, what I'm working on is trying to find a way to give them a much better way of animating so we can get better performances, make things look better, and make it so they can author stuff more quickly. Because right now it takes a long time for them to get the performance they're expecting from the tool like Maya that they're working in to show up in engine. So yes, we're definitely going to get more animations, and we're hoping that we're going to be able to improve the quality of the animations that we do have and make it so that we can kind of bring them out faster and faster over time.
Cool. Awesome. Thanks so much. All right. And with that, I think we were going to dive into a little bit of the history on that note, and we had some questions too ready for that. So yeah, let's jump in. Ryan, I know
Yeah,
you wanted to chat about it.
yeah. So Fortnite has had a version of first person in it since launch. We've had a sniper rifle right since the get go. You don't see your character anymore, so it's first person. I think not that long after launch, we added a first person mode to save the world mode. It's pretty basic, but it was there. It's still supported as far as I'm aware. Uh, Eventually, we moved to a slightly more advanced first person setup where you can actually see your weapon on screen with the MK7 assault rifle. Still in creative, it's still a really nice weapon to use. But the difference there between what we do now is that that's kind of like just a 2D image. It does some fancy stuff behind the scenes to make it so it looks nice and it looks like it's lit as you look around, but it's essentially just a 2D image. And then starting in Chapter 3, Season 4, October 2022, we introduced the Cobra DMR, which is the first weapon that uses like a 3D mesh when you're ADSing. And that's the first one that uses the same first-person tech that I built. And we kind of waited a while after that to introduce a new one. But I think James can probably talk about the actual first-person effort that kind of followed with that.
Yeah, so building off of what Ryan and sort of his efforts, I mentioned earlier, we recognized the helicopter pad hack. We wanted to be able to do something about that. Actually, Alan Noon was on that anti-jank team. He's now part of the creator community. Felix Kupas was also part of it. And for a few months, we kind of put together a prototype. And it was nothing more than just getting the camera in the right position, hiding geometry so that you wouldn't have, like the face clipping with the geometry and trying to make sure that you could blend in and out of the camera, that sort of thing. and we took it to some stakeholders, and they were really harsh about it didn't look well animated, right? Like it didn't look like the gun was attached to the camera. It didn't have a good feel to it. Yes, technically the camera was in the right position, but it didn't really feel like the way like they wanted it to feel. So that's when we actually brought Ryan on board to come and help us with the animation side of things. And he had this system to procedurally animate, basically, and he'll go into more of the details later, but it gets the gun in the right position on the screen to make sure the camera stays with the gun, moves the hands so that they line up with everything. And that's all the magic of Ryan's tech. So we worked on it for a few months after that, but resources were pretty slim. We didn't have any actual animators. So it was just basically a couple of engineers and a few designers were trying to get this thing to take off. And other priorities kind of cropped up, and we had to shelve the project for a little while. So that was in the middle, toward the end, I think, of 2022. And exact times don't matter, but right around then, we had to shelve it for a little while. Then beginning of 24, actually, we decided to try and bring it back. But this time it was going to be a part of like a whole suite of camera devices, right? So we had the perspective camera, the fixed point camera, the orbital camera. And I think that's when Ruffini joined the project too, is when we started working on all of the camera devices. So we had the first person camera, we were developing them all at the same time. And then Epic was going through some ESRB and IARC rating. They were trying to figure out what all that, how do we get creative games to have their own rating aside from Fortnite BR's maturity rating. And they were worried what first person was going to do to that process. So they asked us to shelve it again. So we shelved, that was the second time we had to shelve the first person project. And then actually just about a year ago, I got dragged into a messaging thread where they were talking about they needed some footage of the first person system working in creative mode for GDC. And Ruffini, me, and the other guys on the team were like, what are you talking about? There is no first person. It's been shelved for 9 months. Come to find out that just a couple of days prior, they had decided they were going to announce that first person was going to be coming out at the end of the year. And the messaging just hadn't trickled down to the actual camera team yet. So we resurrected first person in a couple of days. We curated it so that we could get a video for GDC, and we've been working on it ever since. So, and then of course, yeah, Ballistic came about and sort of drove which features we were going to be working on. So yeah, that's kind of a rough history of how things went.
Thank you all for sharing. That's so interesting. Yeah, as everyone can see, things change all the time, but also everyone's feedback, the community's feedback, everything. I know we're getting a lot of questions on certain things that you would love to see. If there's any thoughts you have, or there's things that you're looking for us to add, or I know there's a question here. Is there a plan for creators to have first person maps in a future similar to the racing tab that's in Fortnite? That's all great feedback. If that's something you would like to see, please do share on our EDC forums. If we could drop a link to the forums in there, that would be amazing. And share your feedback, because we're always curious to hear what you would love most. Make sure you upvote those things, and keep sharing that, because that really does help us. Let's see. I have quite a few good questions in here. One person was asking, what was the hardest part / took the longest to get right with first person?
From my perspective, it'd be getting the animations to look right, and I think Ryan explained a little bit about that, why it takes so long, right? They're kind of animating in a black box, and I don't know, Ryan, if you have any more insight on that.
Yeah, I mean, from my perspective, the biggest challenge was to get the first person system to work with the entire range of skins that we support. The game's been built over a really long period of time, and throughout that period of time, we've changed standards about how we author skins. The poly counts have changed, proportions of characters have changed, and as time goes on, characters are allowed to push further and further away from that kind of that default default skins of the game, and trying to make sure that characters' shoulders aren't crashing into the screen and all their coats and everything aren't crashing into the screen has been a really big challenge. And to be perfectly honest, we haven't gotten it right in 100% of the cases. So it's something we're absolutely working on and we want to improve, but it's a huge challenge.
I think also something that came to mind was one of the other issues we ran into that was a pretty big hurdle. Unreal Engine doesn't support separate render passes. Basically, a lot of first-person games will have the scene render once, and then like the character with the weapon will be in a second render pass, and they composite those two images on top of each other. But Unreal Engine doesn't do that. So we actually, and we'll talk a little bit more about the tech later, but we actually had to go in and get there's an engineer on the engine team named Tim Dorius, and he had to go in and make some systems for us just to be able to make sure that we could have the same quality of a first person experience, even though we couldn't have two separate render passes.
Mm. Yeah, and I feel like we answered a little bit of this too, but it's a question that's similar. What are some of the key challenges if you were tackling a new weapon to make compatible with a first-person shooter? It sounds like definitely the animation being one, definitely making sure it all fits, especially with the older weapons and how many more, like you said, Andrew, we have so many coming out. But are there any other specifics for the challenges that we deal with the new weapons?
I think
With
the
the
new
new,
weapons are significantly easier,
yeah,
Oh, that's
right? Because
great.
we
Oh,
like the pipeline's there now, or
yeah.
ish. The pipeline is mostly built now. Like it's more about migrating like all these guns that were built for third person, all these reload animations that were built to be seen from up and to the right, right? Are all now all of a sudden the most important part of the animation is right in front of you and to the left, like the exact part we didn't care about before. So there's a lot of that. And actually, it's like to rewind to the last question, like just the sheer breadth of everything. Like it's not just weapons, right? Like getting consumables working, getting like throwable items working, all the player states, D, B, and O, swimming, uh, skydiving, all the like little mantle. Like there's just like the amount of content that just is left to be authored is, um, you
staggering.
know, yeah.
It's a
Yeah.
lot.
Wow, absolutely. All right. Well, thank you so much for all the info on the history. And if you have any questions, please drop them in chat. I've got quite a few still, but I'm just holding on until we're on the right topic. But yeah, we were going to dive into, so give us a little bit of an overview, Ryan and James, about with the when in regards to underlying tech that had to happen. I think we possibly mentioned it very briefly, but yeah, for what we kind of went through with this, what are we going to be showing?
Yeah. So getting into the underlying tech a little bit more, I mentioned the Cobra DMR was the first weapon that we showed off with the 3D mesh on screen that you're aiming gun sights with. Uh, the big difference there was that we didn't show any of your body with that weapon. Your body became invisible. If you looked down, you didn't see anything. Your hands were never on screen, and it only was in first person when you're aiming down sights. Um, Fast forward to Chapter 5 launch, we had a whole new series of weapons that we had the mod system with. If you put an optic on the weapon, you would be in first person when you ADS'd. And with that, we wanted to make sure that you could see your character's skin while you're in ADS view in first person. So that introduced a huge new set of challenges for the first person system. And traditionally in first person shooters, we have a separate mesh that you see for your full character and the harms that you see on screen. They're completely separate. But because of just the sheer number of skins that we have in Fortnite and some other performance considerations, we just couldn't get away with that. So kind of the way we do some of this tech is I'm distorting the skeleton of the character to keep shoulders off screen, to keep your like your character's chest and stomach from like looking inside the mesh whenever you're looking down. If we pull up that next slide, we
Yeah,
can kind of
absolutely.
see.
Thanks, Dan.
This slide, or was it
Oh,
the video you wanted to show?
Yeah, I want to show the video.
The mesh, that one.
This one, yeah,
there we
you
go.
can see a little bit of it here. So this is Adventure Peely. And some of the stuff we do here is we hide the character's head when you're in first person view. We hide your backpack. And you can see here we're distorting the position of the shoulders. We're pulling them back behind where the camera is. But they're tracking 100% with the camera now. So when you look down, they get ripped off the character. And when you look up, the character's body kind of tracks along with the camera. And that's to prevent a whole bunch of the vertices, part of the mesh, from kind of pushing into the camera. James, do you want to add anything about the kind of the device side of things or any of the stuff you worked on?
The only other thing I was going to mention with that is we also use what's called the world position offset as a material function. We call it a WPO. So in addition to the actual bones of the mesh being bent backwards, we also use a world position offset to just in the renderer to push the vertices again, to push the mesh back behind the camera. But one of the rendering tricks that I mentioned before, we didn't get a second rendering pass. So one of the rendering tricks, and it's been used in other places, we call it baby hands. It's probably more technically known as uniform mesh scaling. But you can see in this slide here, one of the issues if you don't get a separate rendering pass is if you walk into a wall, your arms and your gun are just going to clip into the wall just like they're doing there. So what we do is we uniformly scale everything in the mesh toward the camera. And in this case, this example, we scale it down to 10% of its original size. And really all you're doing, right, it doesn't change it. I say physically, it's all virtual because it's all digital, but it doesn't change it physically in the scene. The mesh is still occupies the same space in the scene, but it renders much, much smaller. And it's a pretty common trick in the industry. Some of the drawbacks of that are have to do with shadows, and we can talk about that in a minute. But if we want to go to the next slide.
We did have a lot of real-time reactions to Peely stretching in such unique ways.
Yeah.
We've got a lot of cursed Peely in chat.
That's right. Yeah.
And oh my, oh, why? Yeah, but you know what? I mean, I'm sure all of you in chat can relate that when you're trying to make something work and you are, developing something, there's tricks of the trade. There's things that you do on the back end to make things, look how you need them to look and work the way you need it to work for players. And yeah, this is a good example of that. I have possibly a dumb question. I'm just curious if you're playing first person with a bunch of people like in Ballistic, but they don't see that, right? So is that just a trick of how we have everything set up for how they look like visually, or how does that work where you're not seeing that animation?
Yeah, so I think, James, you set this up, I think, in the first place, but basically we're creating a copy of your character. One of the is getting used to render the shadows of your character and that other players will see essentially. And then the version that you're seeing, only you get to see. That's the one that I'm doing all the distortions to.
Cool.
We also have all sorts of, you have different network contexts. So like a lot of the code that I'm doing here for distorting the mesh is only going to run for you. So we just don't need to worry about it for other players. Where it does get complicated is situations where you having multiple players on the same device. So like split screening. That's where things do get complicated.
Yeah. So luckily, like if we're playing in a network match, all of these animation adjustments only run on my machine. We never send any of that data back up to the server to be broadcast to the rest of the players around me. But yeah, split screen is a bit of a hurdle.
Cool. Yeah, that's so interesting. Honestly, it looks pretty similar to when I try to rig up a model on Night Shadows.
Yeah.
You know what? That's how you learn. Very cool. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah. And I think so the reason why we have to do, tricks like that, like Ryan says, we've got so much content that we have to sort of just dynamically say, we have to procedurally do a lot of this stuff because we can't go in and author. I think the last time I looked, we had more than 2,000 skins. So we can't go in and re-author 2,000 skins to work in a better way. So we kind of have to do what we can here.
And to be clear, for aspiring game devs out there, I would not recommend doing it the way that we did. We just added first person many years after the game had launched when we had just too much content to go back and all redo.
Yep, exactly.
Good call
And
out.
in this slide, you can actually see the effect of one of the issues by if we're we're morphing the mesh the way we are, you can see in that image on the right, you can see in the shadow, the arms are looking bent, the shoulders are pushed back, the head is disconnected from the body. Um, so one of the things that we do, and Ryan touched on it a little bit, we actually duplicate your player mesh, and one of those meshes is hidden to the player, but only visible in shadows. So we use an unmodified mesh to actually cast the shadow into the scene. The player doesn't see that mesh at all, and other local players will also see that mesh. That's the one that they would see, but other players on the network wouldn't see anything like that either.
Wow, that's some magic. Y'all really came together to make that make it all work. That's awesome.
So, and then yeah, we can go to the next slide. I think this is so mentioned earlier. One of the drawbacks of using baby hands is we can get some weird shadows on the weapon itself. So that we call that self-shadowing. And you can see in the left image, we've got some weird artifacts. That's happening because our shadow caster mesh that's invisible to us is throwing shadows on the mesh, the first person mesh that we actually see. And because in the first person mesh, we've shrunk all the vertices toward the camera, they don't fall where they're supposed to. And so you get these weird looking artifacts and stuff. So again, Tim Dorius, our engine rendering guru, put together a way to use hardware ray tracing shadows. With hardware ray tracing shadows, you can actually tell the system which mesh should be casting shadows onto the scene and which mesh should be ignored by the hardware ray traces. So basically, once again, we use that shadow caster mesh to throw shadows out into the scene, and then we use we have the pixels that are rendered by the first person mesh. We have them just ignore that shadow. I think I saw a hand pop up somewhere
Wow.
on
On
Zoom.
Zoom? Oh,
Yeah, I think it was Dan.
Sorry.
it could have been. Yeah, it's a little
Oh,
touchy.
sorry. Oh, it's probably that like gesture thing, huh?
Yeah, I bet. Unless someone wanted to jump in. Um, we have quite a few questions. Let me see if I can parse some of these out. Okay. Interesting. Will we ever get to adjust Fortnite weapons in terms of balancing and adjust our maps without it affecting other modes? That's a great question. I know we're working on things. Of course, you can always check out the creator roadmap to see what's on the horizon there. But I'm sure things like that are all being considered when we're discussing those things, and that's absolutely a great point and great feedback. But yeah, definitely concerns in regards to anything where we're trying to pull it into creative mode or UEFN. When it comes to what we're using from our outside games, such as Fortnite VR and Ballistic and everything. So yeah, definitely something where I don't believe we're able to comment on that because I'm unaware of that. But it's definitely something I can hear them considering when we're discussing that.
I'm looking at our Miro roadmap right now.
Yeah.
And so custom game items and ranged weapons are on there, whatever that
Yes.
means.
Someone did ask when custom weapons. It's on the roadmap, I believe. Yeah. So that's good. That's good. Um, let's see. Ooh, once we get custom weapon, yeah, see we won't be able to answer questions about the features that aren't out yet, but custom weapons are on the roadmap, so definitely take a look at that. I also got a question, when will goo gun be supported? Um, there's so many guns. We were just talking about there's so many guns. So you'll just have to kind of keep an eye out. If there is specific guns and weapons you want, again, please share your feedback in our EDC feedback forum. That's where all things are logged and documented and sent up to the top. So make sure and share your feedback there if you haven't yet. Same for, we got a question about VR mode. Yeah, if you have feedback, if you want something like that, definitely share it. If there's one thing about this team, it's that we're always listening and we want to get you the tools that you would like to create what you want to create. So always make sure and share. Yeah, any ETA for custom gun models, things like that. Yeah, I assume things similar to that, with custom weapons, is something to just keep an eye out for. Oh, here's an interesting one. Will all the guns eventually get a reload animation rather than disappearing from your field of view?
I'm not sure that we've scheduled all of them to have a separate reload, but we broadly have a few categories of weapons like assault rifles, shotguns, pistols, stuff like that. And I think the goal that we're hoping for is to get at least some coverage for the broad categories of weapons. And hopefully that will mean that we can apply those animations to most weapons, but there will definitely be exceptions for a long time.
Cool. Let's see. Ooh, here's a great question. Players in Fortnite are used to being in third person. As game devs, what would you recommend to help players get adjusted to uh, a new, I guess, change from third to first? That's a really good question.
That is a good question.
I'll
Well,
say
I
one
think
thing.
level design. There, yeah, go ahead.
Field of view is pretty important. A lot of console shooters tend to have a little bit narrower FOV because it can be more comfortable for people coming from a third person experience. If you have set the FOV for your camera really wide, it makes the image look a little bit more distorted and can cause motion sickness for people. So just be cautious there.
Good point.
Yeah. For me, I think a lot of it's going to come into the level design. Through have to be aware of the fact that the player has back to FOV kind of, much smaller range of view, a lot less information coming at them because the camera is now like in their face rather than way up in the sky. So really designing around the fact that your sight lines are completely different in first person than they are in third person. So you might not be able to see somebody coming from really far away anymore, which I think is cool. Like way more intense firefights that way.
Yeah, definitely. Absolutely. The actual
Did we
design
mention
setup is going to feel better or worse.
world scale is also important. When you have a third person camera, you tend to have to make doorways really large so that the camera that's kind of above your character and behind them doesn't feel like you're flying into like a door frame. Whereas if you're in first person, you can make things much truer to life scale. So that is a really big consideration too.
Great point. We also have a question about which we got when we were showing off Peely. Why is the first person pivot point over the shoulder rather than in the middle of the character?
So yeah, that's actually a really interesting question. So we tend to try to keep the pivot point for the character along the central axis of the character. When we're doing the transition from a third person camera to a first person camera, as we did for the Chapter 5 Season 1 weapons, we had to be aware of that motion of the camera coming from behind to right behind the camera. And because the character is holding the weapon off to the right, we tended to leave the camera just a little bit cheating to the right of the center axis, just so the distortions on the character are less obvious. If we can take a look at the videos.
Oh yeah.
Which one is it?
What is
Big Head Slurp.
Big
We
head
can
slurp, Dan, please.
yeah. So in this video, where this kind of shows off in a little bit slower motion, some of the stuff that we do when you're transitioning from third person to first person. So if you look at the positioning of the head there, when we get the camera really close to the character, the head slides off to the left side of the screen. Since we released, we've changed a little bit how this works, but you get the idea. There you go. We actually transition the whole body now. Yeah, yeah. So this kind of shows a little bit why we would want to keep the camera a little bit to the right. If I remember right for ballistic, I think the camera is centered up along the center axis. But it is important to note that when you look down, the camera does kind of transition a little bit forward in front of the character's toes. Because
Hmm.
if we kept it along the center axis of the character, you'd be looking right down into your own body, and there's nothing to shoot, right?
Hmm. Yeah, that's
Yeah,
very cool to see.
when you pitch the camera up and down, we actually move the camera forward and backwards a little bit in space just to kind of give you more of a sense of, especially when you're looking down, it's super important that you're not just staring straight into your torso.
We had someone asking if the stretching system will be updated over time. Someone just pointed out, like, sometimes I can tell it's happening when the field of view is higher than 90.
Yes, absolutely. We call that body warping or bendy arms. And it's something we are absolutely looking at. We were unfortunately aware that it was going to be a problem when we shipped to Ballistic a little bit, but that's one of the things I'm actively working on trying to improve. We are we're considering different ways to reduce the amount that we have to warp the bones, trying to shift some of the work into the material side, kind of like James was saying, kind of pushing vertices individually back. We're looking into ways to improve that. But yeah, it's going to be updated for a while now, for a while to continue.
We did get a question. I don't know how much we can speak to this, but asking if we'll eventually get a ballistic template or some sort of template that's similar to the tool, where we can get the core mechanics set up but create the map ourselves.
I think that would be cool. Do a quick shout out to the Rift Point volume device that we released in 34.0 that will let you create your own Rift ballistic style map. I think that was one of the last sort of pieces of tech that I can think of off the top of my head that we had in ballistic that wasn't like public yet. I think pretty much everything else that we're doing in ballistic now is something that you can do in UEFN yourself with the Rift Point volume coming out. But yeah, I think as far as the template goes, that would be cool. I'm not sure what our plans are currently for it though.
Well, yeah. Again, if you have any feedback on those things, if there's a tutorial or a template or assets or anything that you think would be cool and really helpful, please do share in our forum. Let's see. Got a few other questions about things that we just wouldn't be able to speak to because they're not on the same topic. But if you do have questions, always feel free. You can post in our forums, and we're lurking there and watching. And in other cases, responding. I don't know if anyone in the stream. Are any of you guys in the forums?
Yeah, I've helped
Oh, thanks, Andy.
answer questions sometimes.
What
Why
a
does this
hero.
device not work? And
We
most of the
appreciate
time I
you.
just blame them. Like, you're probably using it right. No, we uh, because it's bugged probably. Which is really helpful because then obviously we get the bugs fixed.
Absolutely. Um, any other, just checking through, full spectator cam control. Will there ever be a full spectator cam controller? Gosh, I wish that would be rad. I haven't heard anything about that on the roadmap, but if there is something, if that's something that you want, definitely share that. Oh, here's a question about animations. I don't know if we have any insight. Is it possible to play animations for the first person mesh?
You mean custom first-person animations? No, not right now. As far as
Okay.
I'm aware, don't think we have an ability to modify character animations currently.
Right. And I know that's something that people are wanting. Again, if you want that, share that feedback, please. Upvote. Uh, okay. I don't know. This one, I'm not sure, so it's okay if we can't answer it. Question about, will there be inspect weapon bind?
Spec weapon binds. Also,
Bind.
I
So like in other games where you like look at your weapon.
I can say that I know it's something that we've talked about. I don't think that any decision has been made as far as I'm aware. It is, it certainly would be very cool. It's just that those type of animations take a while to do because you want them to be really nice, right? And we have to just balance that against all the other things like fixing bugs.
Absolutely. And then this is kind of, I don't think we can speak to this necessarily, but it's, are there any plans to add higher detailed nanite assets for close scenarios? That is a good question. But I don't think any of us here would be able to answer that. So if
I
you,
could I can say that I know that so Tim Dorius is who's been working on the rendering side of things, at least in first person. Some of the tricks that we're doing to get things to render correctly don't work on Nanite yet.
Mm.
I think they're hoping to get to that at some point, but yeah, so that's a little bit nebulous on whether or not we'll ever support Nanite. But if we do, it probably won't be for a while.
Cool. All right. Well, with that, we can go back to our presentation, Dan, and check out the last
Sure.
few slides we got.
So just one of the last pieces of tech that we put together that I wanted to talk about. We're mentioning FOV and how the FOV of the camera, the field of view of the camera, can really affect how the gun and the arms appear on the screen. So you can see in that first image, the arms really stretched out. This is a really wide FOV, so everything sort of gets pulled forward, and you can see that the gun and the arms don't look great. One of the things, one of the features of the camera devices in creative mode is you have a range of FOV that you can decide how you want your scene to render. We wanted to be able to continue with that. We wanted to let creators be able to choose the scene FOV, but the weapons and the character meshes are authored with a certain FOV in mind. And so one of the things that we came up with was this, what we call a differential FOV, where we can render the scene at one FOV, but we have another setting for how we want to render the anything that's in the sort of the first person space. So the gun and the hands. So that's what you're seeing here. You can actually see that on the left, everything's being rendered at 128, and on the right, the scene is still being rendered at 120 FOV, but the rest of it is back to a 70-degree FOV. And that helps make sure that things look nice and we don't, put too much information on the screen that we don't really want there. If we go to the next slide, one of the side effects of that is, like, if you have the mesh rendering at a different FOV than the scene, you can see on the left, the feet don't appear to be touching the ground anymore because the mesh is being rendered at a different FOV. So we put in another piece of tech to blend from scene FOV to first person FOV as you go up the mesh. So the feet, we interpolate between the scene FOV and the weapon FOV. And one more slide there, one of the side effects, you can see that in certain cases, we've got some vertices that appear to be shearing off of this skin's dress. That's because we have to do a material mask on the character skin to decide which vertices need to blend. And so there was another tool we had to build to make sure that we could, instead of using just like a cylinder or a box shape for the material mask, we ended up using like a trapezoidal prism so that I could design, okay, at the bottom it's this size, at the top it's this size, and so I could get things like dresses and hip gear. Often you'll see hip gear, the vertices are shearing. So this is another case of there's just 2,000 skins we have to go through. So you might occasionally see some vertex shearing, and it just means that we haven't gotten to that skin yet, but the tech is there for us to fix it. We just have to churn through the content.
Real quick, before we go on, can we take a look at that, the drum gun FOVs, Dan?
We're also getting a lot of love in chat for you all in regards to what a complex system this was and how many issues you all had to solve that you were able to make happen.
Yeah.
Yeah. So here we have, this is the same kind of scene FOV, the main camera FOV, and this is experimenting with different FOVs that we're rendering the drum gun in Fortnite or in Ballistic Cat. So you can see that the different FOVs really drastically changed the feel of the weapon. So it was really, really valuable for getting the overall feel that we want for the weapons.
Can we see that one more time, Dan? Wow.
Yeah, like you see at like 82 FOV that the drum itself looks tiny, right?
Yeah. Cool. Yes, the drum. It is very cool. Thank you all for your support. This is awesome. Thank you for showing these off. This is I am kind of curious so when you were tasked with this and kind of put on this project, was it when you were trying to kind of figure everything out, how did you go about, I guess, um, how did you go about that process, I guess, is my question, in terms of like with how much you had to take and then reshape and form. Was it just like fixing, like doing one thing and then discovering what the impact was on that, and then constantly trying to figure out the next way to kind of craft around it and make the tool look the way it needed to, and the result look the way it needed to? Was it just finding one thing after another, or did you kind of understand all of the big things you would have to use magic to kind of to tweak right from the get-go?
I think it was probably a good blend of both. I don't know if Ruffini and Ryan have anything they want to say about it, but
Yeah, I think, well, it definitely was both, right? It was a little bit of okay, like I mean, like going back to baby hands, right? There was initially a discussion of, are we going to be able to do a separate render pass, and ultimately the answer was no. Okay, cool, gone. Don't have to worry about those anymore. Let's just focus on how we're going to get this working. And what are all the problems that we're going to run into with this? And it was like, I mean, it's everything you just saw, on top of like things like, oh, I ran into a wall. The gun's not going through the wall, but when I pulled the trigger, the fire effects are. Or the scope is just like way off to the side for some reason, because that didn't get included in the equation. It was kind of like layers of, okay, cool, we got this working, but now we see that this is an issue. To the rendering team's credit, I think pretty much everything that was an issue, they at least knew was coming, right? Especially Tim. Was just okay, so we can do this, but FY, here are the issues that we're probably going to run into, and then sure enough, we ran into them. So I don't think there was anything that the team wasn't prepared for. I'm not sure if there were any pleasant surprises on the way. I'm not sure. Was there anything that was like, cool, this just works?
just worked like it was supposed to.
But yeah.
For things that just kind of worked, the like inheriting a lot of the third person motion that we get from the third person animations, that kind of just works out of the box. For the most part, you have to do a bit of tuning, but that was really great. In terms of really big surprises for me and challenges, was just the ever evolving nature of how we author skins. Like over time, we've really changed like poly counts and how we name bones on characters, which really drastically impacts the system that moves the bones, right? Then we added things like morph targets, which are basically deforming parts of the mesh based on like how you move them. Hulk is a great example. Like whenever he raises his shoulder, it changes the shape of the shoulder in a way that we just can't do easily with by moving bones around in the character. And that had a big impact on how the first person stuff worked as well.
Ruffini mentioned in our local chat here, Ruffini mentioned the Venom skin. There was some fun times early on when we would hide. So we've always been hiding the head so that we could put the camera kind of in that general location. But Venom has this really long animated tongue, and for a while we would just have this. All we would see is just the tongue floating in midair, waving around. So that was fun times.
All right, let's see. A couple of more questions on what we were talking about. Someone was wondering why instead of stretching the character, we didn't just use a masked material to hide body parts that aren't needed in first person.
Kind of the gist of it is that that would be a really great way to do it. We just didn't have the time to go and touch all the skins in order to set those masks up.
Right. Yep.
That'd be something that we would have to author for every single skin that we wanted to work, and we had to do broad strokes procedural stuff as a first pass. There is some, like Ryan mentioned, there is some of that stuff that now we've got a little bit of runway. We are going back and re-exploring some of the cleaner ways of doing things.
Yeah, and to be clear, we do kind of do a little bit of that already with the masking. Weapons like gauntlets, I think the Spider-Man gauntlets, I believe, does something along those lines where it scales down parts of the mesh so you can put the gauntlet over top of it. I think the shoes
work
do a similar way too.
They do a morph target, so they bend the feet in, and so you'll be stomping around as Godzilla, but his feet will shrink down so that they fit inside the shoe mesh, for example. but all that stuff has to be authored one at a time.
Yeah, I guess the only thing that I'm aware of that would be problematic about doing the bone masking basically to scale things down is if you look down, you're still going to see vertices stretching from the point that is not distorted because we want to leave the arms more or less as they are. So if you just have to make sure that the edges where we're doing the stretching doesn't show up on camera.
Stay off camera, yeah.
I recall we did talk about doing potentially some slicing and dicing of arms really early on, but just the way that the characters and stuff are made, or the skins are made, the models are made, just didn't support it.
Yeah, and we're constantly dealing with memory issues. We're always out of memory. So like making a copy of the arms is just really not something we could afford to have because you have to pay for the memory for those separately.
Oh, getting some. So you just use the feet as flip phones to use Nikes? Oh, what? I'm not sure what that means, but I'll take it. We've got some questions about, of course, lots of questions about custom animations, custom weapons. We aren't able to speak on that just because we don't know. But if there is something you like they're asking for, will you release template models so people can properly animate for first person hands like Blender? If we were to do that, that's all great feedback. I mean, if that ever happens, like definitely again, use our forums, use our avenues for sharing feedback to us because we are listening and we want to get you what you want to make the cool things that you want to make. So will we get access to player's camera component to change its aspect ratio, lens settings, focus settings in modes like first and third person? Do we know much about that?
I know that there are plans, and we are making efforts to make more verse-based camera components. We're just not quite there yet. Especially, I'm pretty sure. Before I say anything, did Scene Graph get announced broadly?
Well, I mean,
Okay.
Scene Graph's been experimental for a while, so
Yeah.
it exists.
I
The
meant
roadmap says
the
Q3
newest.
2025, there's going to be a
Yeah.
camera component.
No,
Who
yeah,
knows
That's
what
Scene
that
Graph.
will
yeah.
entail?
We're waiting on updates on Scene Graph, but
There
yeah,
was a
just
recent internal announcement on Scene Graph, and I wasn't sure if that had been broadcasted yet. But
Oh,
anyway,
like
yeah,
so.
there are plans for a camera component, but they're still a little bit nebulous at the moment.
Tom Jenk
But
is
that but
excited
that'd be
about.
the way you would do it is with a Scene Graph camera component.
Oh, getting good questions. All right, and then I know we're getting questions about first person camera vehicle, like in vehicles. Will we have support for that? Is that something we're looking into or?
You
So
would
we
like
tried
to?
it first. Go ahead, Rafini.
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, the interior of our vehicles were once again just not authored for first person. So it's just not. It's a polished thing.
I think you can do first person on motorcycles if I remember correctly. And I think the hoverboard as well, maybe. I know at one point we supported it. We might have turned it off to avoid some jank, but yes, like we would love to turn it back on if we could.
And
Yeah,
I
once
think
again, like our end goal is to get everything right supported, or just about everything.
Yeah.
I
Just
feel like just
as
a
a
few
plan.
weeks ago I hopped on a Raptor in first person, so I think that's supported if I remember right. I was testing
Yeah,
the shoes because the
The
shoes
limbs.
needed to show up on
I
the
don't think we
Raptor.
meant to do that. I think that was I think that one slipped out.
That
But
one was a missed vehicle. Yeah.
Yeah, what more
yeah.
do you need than a raptor? I mean, that would
Yeah.
give them everything. Oh man.
I
All
mean,
right, well, I know we still have a couple more slides, so we can go back to that real quick. And then again, if anyone has any questions, drop them in chat. We've made it through most of them, so thank you for that. All
That's from you,
right.
Rafini.
Oh yeah. So well, this is sort of a tag team. Ryan and I. Ryan actually put most of the system together. It's really, man, on the stream that I'm watching, it's so blurry. I'm like, I hope that's not what the people see.
Oh no. This is just
Yeah,
the
okay.
render.
So, unfortunately, I don't have any cool animations for this one. But what's really cool about this, what you're seeing here, all these numbers, is I'll start with the left side of it. I can slide open myself too, so I'm not just winging it. Okay, yeah. So the left side of it is really cool. It's a bunch of basically booleans that are like, hey, is the player doing X? If they are doing X, then this is the row we're gonna run. And then on the right side of it is the data for the row that you're gonna run. And for me, the two like coolest parts were the one row that says item translation. That is literally where the gun is on screen. So the X value is where it is forward and back, Y is left and right, and the Z is up and down. So when we had to do this, we had to do this for pretty much every gun. And what it is by default it works okay, but with these chooser tables, you can be like, not only do I want the gun at whatever FOV, I want it to be here or here. And that gives us kind of a lot of leeway on, well, the way this gun was originally offered for third person doesn't make sense for it to be like way over here. Actually, something like the minigun is probably a good example of something that in first person was like way up here and looked awful. So I did a whole bunch of like weird tweaks to make it kind of work. The flashlight.
Another good example is if you're in ballistic, most of the weapons, if you're standing up, the weapons are kind of off to the right, but straight up and down when you crouch, will kind of cock off to the side. And that's not custom animation the animators had to make. It's just simply tuning the chooser table here, adding a new value.
Yeah, exactly. The crouch is true and set the rotation adjustment to a little bit over. So basically, that tool makes it way easier as a designer to go in and be like, this is how I want this gun to feel, and this is where I want it to be on screen. And I don't have to bother an animator so much, or I don't have to bother an engineer so much, because like they're busy solving these big world problems of how am I going to get these triangles to look correct in first person. Where I just want the gun to be somewhere on the screen, and when I fire it, the recoil to fire the way that I want it to fire, which we actually have a video of.
Yeah. So another big aspect of the performance of the weapon overall is how it recoils. For the most part, the biggest part of what you're seeing in recoil is done procedurally. The animators do author kind of some of the basic parts, but it's more or less kind of making sure the trigger is being pulled and the weapon going back and like the slide on the weapon moving. But how the weapon moves in the character's hand is being controlled procedurally. And we do that within the chooser table here. So you can see I'm kind of tweaking a value to make it so the weapon kicks down a whole lot. So you can really see the big difference between more or less what we do normally and how changing one value really changes what it looks like. And I'll say it might be worth pointing out that you see a graph here, that purple line that's kind of bouncing around. That's one of the tools I added to make my life easier to see what's going on. Because when you're dealing with, like 5 different recoils all layering together, it can be really difficult to know why things are happening the way they are. And I can't tell you how many hours it saved me just putting a graph on screen to look at outputs. And put debugging in your code, please.
Very cool. Yeah. Getting a lot of love in chat for how we made this happen. So thank you, chat. And Jack Skellington, is that you? Yeah.
Yeah.
One might assume it.
Yeah, he's
What
a
if it
really
wasn't?
good test case because his fingers are so thin. You have to make sure the animations are good to make it look like the weapon's just not floating in midair.
Nice. Yeah. Excellent. You can definitely, it feels so good to look at. Cool. All right. What was there I think was there one other slide or was that it? Was that the end of our
I think that's
slides?
it for the slides. Yeah.
That's it. Oh, we ran out of slides. Oh no. Let's see, we have maybe a couple more questions. Yeah, we're all kind of getting all the same ones. Our rocket launcher's reloading animation is going to be coming anytime soon. There's so many weapons. There's so many weapons, so we can't tell you when. But we're definitely making our way through them. Are there plans of reworking sprinting animation in third person to match first person?
No, I do not believe currently we have plans for that.
Yeah, the movement team is pretty. I wouldn't say that they wouldn't ever change things, but they're in the third person movement team anyway. I think they're pretty settled in on what they're doing with
Yeah.
that.
I mean, we kind of built the first person sprint animations kind of fully independently from what was going on in third person, just because we felt like it looks really strange to see just hands kind of popping up at the bottom of the frame when you know you have a weapon equipped.
Ooh, we're getting a lot of questions now. Does crouching decrease or tighten bullet spread like in other FPS games?
It tightens it, yeah.
Awesome. Did you hear that, Richie Tunes? It does.
If you have the ballistic settings, right?
Yep.
I don't
Probably.
know if like the standard settings do that, but yeah,
Typically it does, yeah, even
Yeah.
in VR.
even
Oh,
in
even
VR.
in beer?
Okay.
Oh, great.
Yeah. As
Although,
long as you're not
in
moving.
their defense, like in ballistic for a lot of the guns, if you just stand still, you've got first shot accuracy, like regardless of if you're crouching. So.
Yeah.
But there are definitely going to be exceptions to that rule. Individual designers who make weapons kind of get to choose the specific behavior of that weapon. So while we're
Cool.
waiting, we can take a look at Bird's test video just so people can see more cursed
Oh, yeah.
distortions.
Let's show it off. Oh. Look at him go. Is this the same as the Peely in terms of what was happening?
Yeah, it's the same behavior. It shows how different proportion characters can look wildly different.
It's weirdly less disturbing than the Peely one.
Mhm.
I don't know what maybe because he's a banana and not an animal, but I don't know. Oh, yeah, this is cool. You see that, everyone? Oh my. Ship it. That's right.
That's
Love
right.
it.
It's
Not the
shipped.
birds, too. Yes, the birds. Everyone. If it works, it works. That's right.
And luckily, as long as you don't see any of this stuff on the camera,
Yeah, this is
we
just for
actually
you
saw.
all.
I won't mention the other game, but when we were looking into this stuff, we saw other games that did this same sort of thing when they were crouching behind like barricades and stuff. You can see the body, the mesh morphing a little bit. So this also isn't unique tech, I don't think. Thankfully.
Very cool. Let's see. Are you guys also limited on what you can do in creative like memory and limitations like that? And if so, why? I believe yes, right? Because we want to make it so it's usable for everyone.
Yeah, anything we do has to be able to perform. And so we've actually had some performance. We've had to go through some performance testing and I had some synchronous loading issues, right? Especially surrounding the kicks. I had to go and fix those just a few weeks ago. That we were instead of loading the meshes in the background, we were loading them inline, and it was causing hitches. So yeah, we have to be aware of that stuff as well.
Yeah, I think we're especially mindful of the download times, right? That I know creators are as well. Um, when you make a big enough project, it takes a long time to download, and that's definitely that can turn people off of even playing it if it takes too long. So same restrictions for actually a lot of the same reasons. That's not to say that we're not trying to get all that fixed, right? Right, but I feel your pain.
Absolutely. Um, Someone asked, "What's your favorite first-person shooter mode, and why is it not zombies?" um,
I love every horror map ever made.
I was
Like
gonna
if
say.
you make a horror map, I've probably played it. I'm really into that. So
Yeah, me
and
too.
actually
Shout out to you
unfortunately
guys.
zombie stuff. Not so much just shooting zombie ones. I don't want to like make one map super like I don't know what the legality of whatever is, but I really like infection maps. That's my jam. If you make any sort of zombie sort of infection map where and it's a death run, like you combine all those together, I'll probably be in that map a lot.
Well, yeah, we did have a question about what was it? If you had, I think it was 12. Oh, did I lose it? It was one that was just kind of an off in the chat, but it didn't have the question in front of it. But I think, oh, here it is. If you had 6 months, what person shooter map would you want to make? Good one.
I mean, probably the first one I'd make just to experiment would be like a Quake 3 style, like lots of jump pads and one hit kills. I think that'd be fun.
It'd probably be a boomer
Probably
shooter.
already out there. But that's what I'd want to make.
Did you say a boomer shooter?
Yeah, it'd probably be a boomer shooter.
Railguns all the way.
Yeah.
One hit kill.
Yeah, I think I'd make a lot of what we're already seeing. That's the you know I grew up in the days of GoldenEye and those kinds of games, and that was a lot of fun. Little arena shooters. Those are my favorite.
I saw there's some cool ones like that out there already. So props to the community putting them together.
Infection map. Maybe infection map. Said Death Run infection map. If anybody wants to make it, I will play it. It'll be one person or a certain amount of players start as zombies. Everybody else is a human. If a zombie hits a player, that player becomes a zombie. And the players can shoot at the zombies and ideally slow them down. Like one zombie is basically be invincible, but when they shoot him, it like slows them down and pushes them backwards. And then the rest of the map's just a death run with checkpoints that every once in a while you just gotta hold up, shoot at zombies, and not get infected. Yep.
Ooh, that's a
Make that-
spicy
Very
one.
specific game design right there.
It is. I used to play a lot of those kinds of maps in other modded games back in the day, and it's like therapy for me. So
Nice.
Absolutely. We all have those games.
Comfort food games, right?
yeah.
Mhm. Let's see. We have something like this, an animation tool with custom items and weapons in the future. I don't know, but if you want it, you should ask for it. Just do it. Just put it in the forums. Will the first person camera device ever get the option to flip the character's arms to the left side? It's very specific.
Oh yeah, Counter-Strike just did that. I guess never say never, but I don't
Yeah.
think we have anything
You want
currently
that?
planned.
In that
Sure.
example, does the weapon get mirrored? Does the ejection port, if it's on the right-hand side, go to the left-hand side? Are they just mirroring the mesh, or
I'd have to
is it
take a look
actually?
at it again. This is a relatively new thing. Counter-Strike like just did it a few months ago, or I don't know. I don't know time anymore. It may have been
Fair.
like a year ago.
Yeah, I'd have to look at the tech to see if we can do it, if we can just straight up mirror our meshes. If we can do that, potentially it'd be easy to do. I don't know if we'd be allowed to though for IP skins. That's a great question. It's an interesting idea for sure.
An accessibility feature, technically, yeah. Great point. Yeah, I know we'd love to add as much as we can for accessibility. It's all of this, I mean all of it. All of it. We've been asking about different weapons and animations and things. It all comes down to resources and priority and also what you all are asking for. So definitely keep on that. And upvote the things that you really want as well. Let's see. Ooh. Any other questions? Are choosers tables going to be available for creators to personalize weapon behavior? Oh, we don't I don't believe we can answer that one. All right.
I mean, I don't think there aren't really any plans for the near term.
Cool. All right. Well, if that's it, we answered so many questions today. My goodness. Thank you all for your help and getting the information out there. And thank you for showing off all the cool stuff that we got to today and all of the different smokes and mirrors that went into making this fantastic and making it work. Definitely a lot of support in chat and a lot of learnings that were had today by the community. So I really appreciate you guys all coming on here and sharing your knowledge with the community. Is there any, I guess I'll ask you all, is there is there any last minute thoughts you have for the community or advice you have for aspiring game developers, developers that have been in the space in a while who are creating in Fortnite now. Any last thoughts you have for them?
My advice is to work on something and publish it, even if you don't think it's great. There's a lot to be said for getting a project done instead of having 50 projects that are halfway done.
I would echo that, like churning through stuff, getting through projects, right? You want to, there's an idea, you want to fail early. So you want to try something, and if it fails, you can move on quickly and try something else. But the iteration of going through, the full scope of creating something, there's gonna be massive learnings from that. So I would echo what Ryan said.
Feedback early and often. It's I think especially from a designer perspective, you get really attached to an idea, and also it's really easy to potentially get defensive of your idea, right? Where you put something out and people tell you like this sucks, and you're like, what? No, this can't suck. It was my idea. This is great. But maybe it does suck. And getting that feedback, but it's not even necessarily it sucks. Maybe your execution sucks, right? So getting feedback early and often can help you address that before you're just like way, way, way out in the ocean and there's no way to paddle back. And you have to like scrap the whole thing or rewrite something from scratch. I think it's significantly less discouraging. But also you can be afraid to do it, right? Because of that. But don't be afraid of doing that. Like just because your idea wasn't great the first time, that's good. Now you know that. Hit it again. Um, it's it's really easy to be afraid of bad feedback, but you just got to embrace it.
Absolutely. Awesome. Well, thank you all so much for your time. And thank you, chat and community, for being here and checking it out and supporting us. And if you have any feedback, like we said, or if you have any questions about things, if you're excited about certain features, if you want certain features again, hit us up in our Fortnite or in our Epic Developer Community Fortnite forums to share feedback and thoughts. And of course, if you notice any issues or bugs, please as well drop them in there so we can tackle those and keep track of those. And we really appreciate all that you do. So yeah, thank you, chat, and thank you guys for coming, and we'll see you next time on Creating in Fortnite. Bye everybody.
Yes.